All right, it's time to jump in for round two of the world-famous women's panel. And this is an interesting story. United Airlines had a couple of young ladies trying to get on. When I say young, like 10 to 15 years old, and they had leggings on. Some of the attendants felt it was inappropriate, so they were asked now to either change or to find something more appropriate to wear onto a United Airlines flight. Apparently, they were flying on buddy passes, so that is perhaps their mom or dad or an uncle, whatever, had these passes, works for the airlines, and they got them these passes when they're held for a little bit higher standard. But these are younger girls wearing leggings, which you see, you cannot swing cat by the tail in Edmonton without hitting someone wearing leggings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was very strange. I work with children, and I have to sometimes interact with clothing policies or dress code policies, which is always uncomfortable, and it's always uncomfortable to talk to teenagers or preteens about what they're wearing or gosh how they're smelling, and it's awful. It's an awful conversation for whoever's giving it, and it's definitely an awful conversation for that kid to be singled out. And I can't imagine what it must have been like to have been a teenage or preteen girl and have someone official come up to you and say what you are wearing is inappropriate, especially when I think about the kinds of clothing that's being made. And I mean, maybe it's a little bit easier for guys in dressing and like what's travel wear and what's not travel wear, whereas girls, it's a lot more flexible. But I can't imagine looking at the clothing that exists out there today and looking at a preteen or teenage girl and telling them what you're wearing in leggings and a t-shirt is inappropriate, and it's inappropriate for travel, in which lots of people are looking for comfort. I couldn't help when I read this article but feel terribly bad for these two girls and what they must have been feeling when they were being told that they did not look appropriate for travel, assuming that they had carefully selected an outfit to then go on a plane. Yeah.
Well, and let's be really clear, like these are children. You know, we're talking, I think the youngest child was 10 years old. If you're flying with children, I mean, your first decision is what are they going to be most comfortable in, right? Because you're flying with kids, and kids on planes, you know, you just want to make it as easy as possible, but also, like, what about leggings on a child is so inappropriate that we need to police that? Like, there's this sort of like weird boundary, like even if you're going to talk about like, oh, some clothing is inappropriate because it's too sexual, we're talking about a 10-year-old, right? So how are you looking at a 10-year-old child, 10-year-old girl in leggings and saying, this is inappropriate, this is indecent, this is what, you know, what's so wrong with this? Especially when other passengers on planes wear leggings all the time. And I can understand that, you know, the company's saying, well, they need to represent, you know, they're flying on one of our passes, they need to represent us, which I kind of question whether anyone's going to assume a 10-year-old child is a representative of an airline. Yeah. But also, if they're neat and they're clean and the necessary parts of their bodies are covered, like, how are they poorly representing you by wearing leggings, which are a thing that probably a gazillion other people on the flight are wearing? Yeah. You know, but this sexualization, especially like of leggings and of the idea of like children being dressed inappropriately, always sort of makes me feel really uncomfortable when we start to talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it really comes down to who am I to judge how another person is dressed? Like what gives me that authority in any situation? If they were misbehaving, if they were acting up, if they were being inappropriate, that's a different decision. But how you're dressed is no reason to judge someone else. And so I don't know if this was, you know, like you said, a sexualized thing, or if it was a religious thing, or if there was a complaint by another. I don't understand the origin of how this even becomes a topic of conversation, especially when you ask them to go look in their luggage, and guess what? They probably got 10 other pairs of leggings in there.
Yeah. And we were just talking right before this about how often people on buddy passes have to dress up on the off chance that they get bumped to first class. Right? And which I find really interesting, because if you flat out buy a first class ticket, there's not the asterisk at the bottom, cannot wear leggings, right? So if you buy your first class ticket, you can wear whatever you want. But if someone is bumped into that area, you need to have the impression of like, oh, they are worthy, right? Like they are allowed to join us up here. I can wear whatever I want, but you need to kind of step up and represent yourself in a different way. I don't even think that these girls were eligible to go in first class. I think they were just getting on the plane. But this idea that then they have to not only just be like 10-year-olds, but they need to be fancy 10-year-olds in order to get the same ticket that anyone else is getting. It's just that they got theirs in a different matter. And what that looks like for a 10-year-old child, it's not, we're not on Pan Am. This is not the 1960s. We're not wearing all our little kind of like matching outfits. It's 2017. Yeah, we're looking for getting kids somewhere comfortably, hopefully peacefully, if we're lucky, right? It was a strange conversation all around.